It has all the ingredients of a Greek tragedy.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we'll be looking at why Princess Diana is still so relevant.
I have it on very good authority that the quest for perfection our society demands can leave the individual gasping for breath at every turn.
For this essay, we'll be looking at the People's Princess's ongoing legacy and why she's still such a significant figure today. What do you think is Diana's biggest legacy? Let us know in the comments. Diana, Princess of Wales, never failed to touch those whose paths she crossed. Although she certainly had her own struggles, she was often one of the loudest voices advocating for the most vulnerable in society.
I think the biggest disease this world suffers from in this day and age is the disease of people feeling unloved, and I know that I can give love.
Some of the causes closest to her heart included banning the use of landmines, tackling youth poverty and homelessness, leprosy, mental health, and destigmatizing AIDS and HIV. Indeed, during the height of the HIV/AIDS epidemic in the 1980s, Diana showed the world that those suffering from this disease needed kindness, compassion, and understanding, rather than fear and condemnation.
We must recognise that not all who are HIV positive are ill. In fact, many of them are healthier than you and I. After all, they have a powerful incentive to stay healthy.
In 1987, she opened the UK's first HIV/AIDS ward at London Middlesex Hospital. In a move that shook the world, she was photographed shaking hands with a man who was sick with the disease without wearing gloves. In 1989, she visited a hospital in Harlem where she famously hugged a sick child who, due to the stigma, couldn't get adopted.
Staff told the princess they were surprised that she'd come to Harlem Hospital, a place never visited by any American president and few major political leaders.
To paraphrase those who knew Diana, she led with her heart rather than her head, and sometimes that clashed with royal protocol, but her heart always won.
And albeit that's got me into trouble in my work, I understand that. But someone's got to go out there and love people and show it.
We could easily list out all the ways she stood out from the royal crowd. However, some of her most impactful ways involved her treatment of the general public. She defied royal rules about wearing gloves in order to feel more connected to the people she was meeting.
The lead up to Princess Diana coming was, will she or won't she wear gloves? And she didn't. I mean, I believe she wouldn't, and she's lived up to what I believed.
She also respectfully ensured that she spoke to everyone at eye level. Her decision to break away from tradition created a new path for future generations of British royals.
I would like a monarchy that has more contact with its people. And I don't mean by riding around bicycles and things like that, but just having a more in-depth understanding.
As well as her actions, Diana changed the game in fashion too. She became a style icon, not just for her numerous beautiful outfits, but also for dressing outside of royal boundaries.
I think there is a language of clothes, and Diana really got to understand that. You can make a real statement and show what you're feeling at the time.
For Diana, fashion was a form of self-expression, especially after her divorce from Prince Charles. She loved cuts that showed off her shoulders, which was a major faux pas previously.
Of course Diana knew all eyes were going to be on her. She didn't have to say anything with words. It was a fashion response. That dress became her clear message to Charles and the world.
She wasn't afraid of low cuts, and she didn't stick to the nude nail polish rules either. She also wore black just because, whereas royal rules dictated that black only be worn at funerals. She sure knew how to make a statement through her outfits alone.
That's what fashion's all about. She really lived through the clothes.
It wasn't just her public image that challenged the rules either. For Diana, nothing was more important than family.
She always wanted to be a mother, and as soon as her baby arrived, that was it. She was setting the standards for her children.
She was an affectionate, hands-on mum who made sure that her kids got a well-rounded upbringing. She was the first royal to deliver a future monarch in a hospital, chose her sons' names herself, and sent the boys to public school. She also took her kids on royal tours, which was unheard of.
Diana completely changed royal motherhood, completely turned it on its head. She put motherhood before monarchy, and that was not traditionally what had happened for generations of royal mothers and women.
The young princes were exposed to non-royal life, from waiting in line like everyone else at the amusement parks to making sure they understood just how privileged they were.
What impact that experience will have on your children?
I want them to have an understanding of people's emotions, people's insecurities, people's distress, and people's hopes and dreams.
It was also her openness about her own struggles that made this royal seem so approachable.
I've never had a depression in my life, but then when I analysed it, I could see that the changes I'd made in the last year had all caught up with me, and my body had said, we want a rest.
Her candidness about mental health at a time when it was still so taboo had a major impact on those who loved her. Supposedly, there was even a rise in women seeking treatment after Diana shared her own battles with mental disorders. Andrew Morton's tell-all book, Diana, Her True Story, created quite a scandal for detailing her personal problems, until it came to light that the princess herself was his source.
I decided to do a more discreet thing, which ultimately wasn't discreet, but I chose to hurt myself instead of hurting all of you.
Diana wasn't interested in a picture-perfect life. Instead, she shared her own vulnerabilities to help others feel less alone.
With greater awareness and more information, these people who are locked into a spiral of secret despair can be reached before the disease takes over their lives.
It was also no secret that many of Diana's struggles stemmed from her unhappy marriage.
I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on.
And I suppose in love.
Of course.
Whatever in love means.
From the outside, we saw a fairy tale, but the reality was far more grim. Charles was still in love with Camilla Parker Bowles. Diana was struggling to fit in with the royal family, and neither were reportedly faithful.
How awful incompatibility is, and how dreadfully destructive it can be for the players in this extraordinary drama.
In the early 90s, Diana went public with their marital problems, and after separating in 1992, they divorced in 1996. We're not saying that correlation equals causation, but there was a sharp rise in UK divorces in the mid-90s. Perhaps Diana's honesty cracked another stigma and helped people see that it was okay to leave troubled relationships.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
The late princess also had a tricky relationship with the media.
She knew how to play the media, how to work a room, how to steal the show. But I think that came from her insecurity.
She was one of the most hounded and photographed public figures of her time. But she also acknowledged that it was a necessary evil and a part of public life that wouldn't just disappear. So instead, she decided to take control and use the media's relentlessness to highlight the causes that mattered to her.
I've been in a privileged position for 15 years, and I've got tremendous knowledge about people and how to communicate. I've learnt that. I've got it, and I want to use it.
Supposedly, she'd also invite tabloid editors to Kensington Palace and won them over with her charm. But ultimately, it wasn't enough. Sadly, Diana's story ended in tragedy, and for a brief moment, we thought the media had learned its lesson.
The driver lost control while driving at very high speed. According to some reports, at over 100 miles an hour as he sought to escape from several paparazzi, photographers who specialise in following celebrities and who on this occasion were chasing the couple on motorbikes.
Following Diana's death, the UK's Press Complaint Commission, since replaced by the Independent Press Standards Organisation, added a clause to its policies forbidding intimidation, harassment or persistent pursuit.
I think one of the hardest things to come to terms with is the fact that the people that chased her into the tunnel were the same people that were taking photographs of her while she was still dying on the back seat of the car.
Meanwhile, in 1998, as a direct response, California passed a law prohibiting paparazzi from trespassing. Later, additional laws were passed to prevent reckless driving in pursuit of photos. Even so, celebrities continue to fight for their right to privacy to this day.
I have to yell, "She's a child, leave my child alone, leave my child alone." We get into the car, my daughter is now sobbing and she says to me, "Mommy, are they going to kill us?"
Prince Harry has even said that what he observed to be similar treatment of his wife, Meghan Markle, was a contributing factor to their leaving royal life behind.
I think she saw it coming. And I certainly felt her presence throughout this whole process.
But Diana's death did a lot more than change media-related laws and policies. The world was shaken when the news broke and people across the world came together in mourning.
We heard that huge scream. "Diana, we love you." And it cut right through all of us.
The royal family's stiff upper lip approach changed the way the public viewed them. They clearly hadn't anticipated just how many people she'd reached or just how loved she was.
And it is my belief that they will any moment reject this mood, which is being stirred up by the press, in favour of a period of restrained grief and sober private mourning.
However, the crowds gathering around Kensington Palace and Kensington Gardens carrying bouquets of flowers spoke volumes. The Ottawa Treaty banning the use of anti-personnel landmines was drafted and signed shortly after her death too. There was barely a soul whose life she hadn't touched in some way.
All over the world, she was a symbol of selfless humanity, a standard-bearer for the rights of the truly downtrodden, a very British girl who transcended nationality.
Ever since, Princes William and Harry have made it their mission to continue their mother's legacy.
Today, Diana's boys are leading her charities and more. William on the cover of an LGBT magazine, raising awareness about bullying. And sometimes, to spotlight a cause, they go further than even she did.
They've fronted concerts, unveiled tributes, and made sure that their kids know about their grandmother. However, what she would perhaps be proudest of is that they inherited her passion for giving back.
You know, someone has to take the lead and has to be brave enough to force that conversation.
As well as getting heavily involved in causes that meant so much to her, together and separately, they've also created their own foundations advocating for mental health, wildlife conservations, supporting first responders, and the rehabilitation of serving and veteran service personnel. Both are clearly dedicated to carrying on their mum's desire to make the world a better place.
We are completely aware that we're in a very privileged position, and I will spend the rest of my life earning that privilege and trying to bring a spotlight onto things and causes that really matter to me.
Wherever Diana went and whatever she did, she left an everlasting impact. And that's why we continue to remember her and everything she did to this day.